I'm not entirely sure what it's gonna look like for our channel because I assume we don't have a thumbnail up, but it should all work. Yeah, yeah. If you click live, it does say Game Over Vancouver live stream, but I've just got to set up, I guess, the title and stuff. Um, and I'll share it on social media as well.
Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Good to go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Game Over Winnipeg and Game Over Vancouver's post-game show here from tonight's game between the Jets and the Canucks. We're going through a little bit of technical difficulties on our end, but my host here, Zach Clarke from Game Over Vancouver, has now fixed it, and we're good to go. So tonight's game was a 6-1 decision by the Winnipeg Jets over the Vancouver Canucks. Kyle Connor, of course, had a natural hat trick in the first period, which got the games kind of tilted in the Jets' favor. The Jets continued from there. Goals from Neil Pionk, Nino Niederreiter, and Mark Scheifele got the other Jets' goals, while Niels Hoglander scored for Vancouver to break Hellebuck's shutout streak at about 100 and whatever it was, 100 something minutes. So again, my name is Ty DeLello, and I am joined by Zach Clarke from Game Over Vancouver. Zach, it's good to finally do a show with some Vancouver hosts. I was wondering when we were going to get the chance to do one of these, albeit probably not a great showing and effort from the Canucks tonight, I'm sure. But I guess what did you see from your team's side tonight?
Yeah, nice to finally be able to talk to you guys at Game Over Winnipeg. Such a great crew you guys have. And unfortunately, such a great team you guys have as well. My first time getting to sit down and watch the Jets this year and look like the real deal. As opposed to Vancouver. Arguably the worst game of the year for Vancouver. There are a couple others you could look at and point to. But I think in terms of all round, everyone on the team sucking, tonight must have been the worst game because at least the other games in the past where the Canucks got absolutely shelled, think back to that New Jersey game. There was some against New York Islanders. At least in some of those games, you could point to certain individuals on the team and say, hey, those guys had a good game. Tonight, every single player on Vancouver sucked in every complete way. There was not a single player that I thought had an acceptable game. I think it was arguably the worst effort of the year, and I think especially the Canucks superstars were invisible tonight. Even the legendary Quinn Hughes did not live up to his status in tonight's game. I thought overall disappointment embodied in a singular hockey game. That's how that felt as a Canucks fan.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looked like from a Jets perspective. I think the early goals from Kyle Connor kind of let the wind out of the sails for Vancouver, and it seemed like after the Jets built that 3-0 lead, it looked like the Canucks seemingly kind of gave up, or like they didn't seem to have that extra step, that extra footing, for the rest of the night, and Winnipeg was able to just keep the foot on the gas and kind of maintain the pace of play for the majority of the 60 minutes. So yeah, the Jets have been playing quite well lately. This was another good outing, over a team like Vancouver, who is supposed to be, pretty good. I believe Vancouver's in a playoff spot right now still. It's a good win over a good team. So, Jets fans are probably pretty excited at, everyone in the Jets lineup. Aside from Logan Stanley, who, gave up that turnover to give up, the Niels Hoglander goal and break the shutout streak. But I'm not going to rip on him too much tonight because the Jets did win 6-1. And I do feel, somewhat bad for you and the other Canuck fans. Obviously not a great showing from Vancouver tonight.
No, it really wasn't, and I think that it kind of started bad and got worse. There was really no redeeming factors. I mean, the Kyle Connor opening sequence of the goal, I mean, what an incredible player. I mean, a hat trick in less than 6.5 minutes really speaks for itself. That's a stat line that just you can take one look at and appreciate what a talented player he is and what he brings to that Jets team. But at the same time, I mean, the whole game can be summed up by the very first Winnipeg Jets goal, where Kevin Lankinen comes out of his net to try to make a play, rings it around the boards, it's immediately turned over, and they score. And when Kevin Lankinen, who has been one of the few bright spots of the Canucks season to date, he's been the epitome of consistency for Vancouver, when he makes an elementary mistake of that magnitude, you know you're not in for a good time, and it wasn't a good time. Fun fact about that Kyle Connor hat trick, it was one goal against each Canucks defensive pairing. So each defensive pairing had a chance to shut down Kyle Connor, and each one failed miserably. And I mean, I'm going to get into some heavier rants later on, but I think that this was a staple game for the Canucks fans that say both the defense needs to be upgraded and Tocchet has to figure out how to play them. Because tonight was just an abomination of hockey. I don't even know if you can call it hockey from the Canucks perspective. The Jets, I mean, were the better. They win that game 100 times out of 100. It didn't feel like the Canucks were in it for even a minute.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you, and I think Vancouver and Jim Rutherford are kind of known for making early moves and stuff. So I totally anticipate, Vancouver to be one of the first teams in making some pre-deadline transactions, and we'll kind of see I know I've been away for the last couple of weeks, so I'm not entirely sure where things are at with all that JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, whatnot. They certainly did not look that good tonight either. I really don't know what to say about the Canucks right now. It definitely seems like they do need to make some moves if they want to, hang on to, making the playoffs. I believe Mark said in the chat that Calgary is now a half or a point ahead for the last wildcard spot. And Vancouver is now 3-4-3 of their last 10 games. So you really got to think that some changes need to be on the horizon if Vancouver is going to pull their way out of this and get into one of those wildcard positions for the end of the season.
No, absolutely, and the most frustrating part about it is it just feels like it's their wild card spot to lose. If you look at the other teams that are challenging for that wild card spot, I mean, right now your number one rival is Calgary, and lovely folks over at Game Over Calgary, but they're the best part about that franchise. It's not a good hockey team. Dustin Wolf is a crazy good story. It's insane to me how low his odds are in the betting odds to win the Calder, when in my mind, he should be the forefront proprietor. He's pretty much the sole reason that they are in that wild card spot right now. But just looking at their roster, this is not a team that the Canucks should be struggling to overtake in the standings, but they have been all year long struggling to overtake them in the standings. And I think it's just because the Canucks cannot string together any semblance of consistency. I mean, the game before this, the single game before this, was arguably the best game the Canucks have played all season long. Dominated Toronto in their building, a 3-0 shutout victory where the Canucks were handily the better team the entire game. And then they come out, and they don't just lay an egg, they lay 6 of them. 6 goals against, and again, it was just one of those games where not 1 point did you think the Canucks were even going to threaten a comeback. The one goal that they scored was even just an individual play by arguably the only guy that had a somewhat good game tonight, Niels Hoglander. And I think now, looking at the stat cards for this game, it's shocking just how poor everyone played. And I think it says something that of the 5 of the 6 Canucks' worst players analytically were all defensemen, including the returning Filip Hronek. So not a staple game for anyone in Vancouver. But again, I was so impressed by the Winnipeg Jets. In my first time really getting to watch them, I've known Connor Hellebuck's the real deal. He's been the real deal for years. But the depth on that Jets team, I mean, every single line is a threat to score. And I really like the defensive core you guys have built over there as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the one, I guess, take some solace in the fact you did lose 6-1, but it was to like a top 5 team. It wasn't like you lost 6-1 to Anaheim, or like the Jets are a pretty good hockey team, and they really showed that tonight. And every team's gonna have those off games. The Jets have had a couple stinkers too in the last couple months. Yeah, I was just the Jets were very dominant. That first line, Kyle Connor, Gabe Vilardi, and Mark Scheifele, have been very hot as of late, and that definitely continued. Kyle Connor obviously had 3 goals and an assist. Gabe Vilardi 3 assists, and Mark Scheifele had 1+1. And then you're right, the depth for the Jets showed. Niederreiter and Perfetti both having a pair of points. Neil Pionk as well. Nick Ehlers, Rasmus Kupari. It was definitely scoring by committee tonight. And there's just a lot to like for the Jets as they build confidence to try to make a push to win the division. Something the Jets haven't done in their 2.0 history. We've never raised the banner yet. In these last 14 seasons. So that'd be something that would be nice, and hopefully to get a wild card team in the playoffs. You really don't want that 2 versus 3 matchup in the Central, as the Jets have learned the last couple of years. It would be nice to play a Vancouver, no offense, or a Calgary or a St. Louis, as opposed to getting Colorado again, or Vegas or whatever in the first round. So I think that's kind of games like these are good steps in the right direction for the Jets. I guess I'll do a quick ad read because we've kind of gone on. We'll hit Hyperdrive Hockey, which they're doing their thing. I'm seeing they had a nice little segment on Connor Hellebuck last episode. So for those out there, please check out the flagship show of the Game Over Network on the Game Over Network channel, Hyperdrive Hockey. All things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. Whatever it is and wherever it is, Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all of your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts on the Hyperdrive Hockey page or at thegameovernetwork.com. Once again, my name is Ty DeLello, and I'm joined here by Zach Clarke. And Zach, I believe it was Filip Hronek's return to the lineup. I know nobody on Vancouver played well, but I guess what did you see from him in his return to the Canucks tonight?
All right, so this might be where one of my first Zach rants of the defense gets started here, because I think the biggest thing that Canucks fans have lamented upon this whole year for the Canucks defense is the lack of puck movement from the back end. Now, a big part of that is that Filip Hronek has been out for so long. Now, I'm not going to say Filip Hronek played well tonight, because no one on the Canucks did. However, you immediately saw his impact of moving the puck out from the back end, and it's so refreshing seeing a defender who knows how to do more than just go off the glass and out. And this is why watching the Canucks defense score is so frustrating all of the time, because outside of Hughes and Hronek, the only guy that can move the puck is Erik Brannstrom. And I know that the Canucks management doesn't like Erik Brannstrom because he's a small guy, and sure, he has defensive lapses. But everyone else has defensive lapses. When no one is good defensively, if you've got 4, pylons out there, you pick the pylon that can at least get the puck out of his own end. It is brutal having to watch Derek Forbort and Noah Juleson go off the glass and out just to narrowly escape certain death. You lose possession right away, and the Jets get right back to the offensive. It is actually hard to watch at this point, the Canucks' defensive depth. I mean, I do not want to ever see Noah Juleson lace them up for Vancouver again. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Please, if he was on the Jets, he'd be 8th on the defensive depth chart. I mean, it's crazy, the guys that we're trotting out there on a nightly basis. And I think it's getting to the point where you have to see what Filip Hronek looks like on his own pairing, because right now, sure, the Hughes and Hronek pairing can break it out pretty much every defensive shift that they touch the puck in their own end, but every other defensive pair is floundering like a fish out of water out there. And that was made so evident tonight, but the amount of turnovers that the Jets were able to get in neutral ice and in the offensive zone. And certainly some of that is due to the Jets' offensive firepower and their ability to shut down passing lanes on the forecheck. But a lot of that is due to the Canucks defense core seemingly have never made a pass before in their entire life. And I'm getting very sick of watching it, and tonight's game was a perfect example of why you cannot, absolutely cannot keep trotting out the same core over and over again. It isn't working. Try something else. Kaja May, our wonderful, one of my wonderful co-hosts here at Game Over Vancouver, has been banging the Talkett isn't a very good coach drum for a while now. And I've got to give her credit for hopping on that train early, because at this point, I'm starting to side with every other Vancouver fan that feels really fed up with the lack of changes, the lack of experimentation, and the lack of success.
Yeah, I think looking at some of Rick Tockett's post-game quotes, he said, kind of the same things you were kind of talking about. Everybody on the team had a tough night, and then he said, it's my job. I've got to get the guys committed. It's on me. It's hard to be consistent. That's not really good words. A fan base wants to hear if the coach can't. If the coach can't get the players to play and play hard, which you should be doing in this league. And a lot of the Canucks tonight looked very off, did not look like strong NHL players they should be, who they are. I was going to ask you one more player I wanted to ask you about was Lekkerimaki, because it's someone that I've been looking at acquiring in a fantasy dynasty league. What have you kind of thought about, his game and his short little, runway so far this season?
I love Lekkerimaki. I think that he's an awesome player. I think he's going to have a great NHL career. And the more that I see him, the more that I am kind of reassured that he will become a legitimate NHL player. I think that when you look at young players trying to make it into the league, the things that make the highlight reels aren't what keeps them in the league. Everyone knows he's got a great shot, but it takes so much more than that to be a good NHL player. And I've really liked his details. I think that his work along the boards has improved significantly, and I think that he's adjusted to North American ice really well coming over from the SHL. So I have really liked what Lekkerimiki's brought, and I thought that it was really interesting to see that JT Miller lost his spot on Power Play 1 tonight to Jonathan Lekkerimaki. And so it says something about both Lekkerimaki and JT Miller that a rookie playing in just a handful of NHL games is able to get a spot on Power Play 1 over JT Miller. And I thought also he utilized that really well. I think there's a really good chance he would have actually had a goal on that second power play had his stick not disintegrated when he went for a one-timer. I think that he's established at this point that I don't think he needs any more time in the AHL. I think you can keep him in the NHL. I don't necessarily think that he's a threat to win the Calder necessarily. I think he's going to be a solid rookie season, not a Calder winning season. But I've really liked Lekkerimaki. That being said, I don't know that I'd pick him up in fantasy. I still think that we're going to see him limited utilization here for the Canucks. But honestly, I do think that he's going to be a legitimate player for Vancouver. And thank God, because honestly, outside of Lekkerimaki and Willander, it's a pretty bare prospects cupboard for the Canucks.
Yeah, I might, if it's a dynasty league, maybe people pick him up, for the future, because I think he's definitely got, middle six, either second or third line potential, 5-on-5, and also, like you said, playing on the power play. I did notice him out there on PP1 over JT Miller, and, for whatever reason, Miller and, Pettersson were off tonight. They've been off, pretty much all season long, and those are, your two top, offensive, forwards, talents. I guess where do you stand on the whole thing with those two? And I guess which one would you move if you had to trade one? Like I said, I've been kind of out of the loop for the last couple of weeks. I don't really know what's all been talked about lately. So I guess where do things sit there? And then what would you do with the Miller and Pettersson situation?
Well, interestingly enough, tonight, JT Miller really found himself in the doghouse, and it's understandably so. He looks so checked out. The amount of shifts he was coasting on, and you can tell, it looks like the JT Miller of 2022, when Canucks fans were saying, we need to give this guy away. I remember when Canucks fans were saying, we should give JT Miller away for future considerations, just 2 short years ago. Then he turned it around to being one of the best power forwards in the league, and now it looks like he's stepping back in a major way. Miller played only 11 minutes of ice time 5-on-5. That was second least on the entire team tonight. The fourth line got more minutes than he did 5-on-5. And for good reason. I'm going to go check back on my notes here. I believe it was the second goal. or the second Kyle Connor goal of 3. No, pardon me, the third one. So the third one, when Kyle Connor cuts right through the defense, he gets past Myers, and the other guy standing right there is JT Miller. And if you watch him on that play, he doesn't even move a muscle. He lets Kyle Connor waltz right by him, and he doesn't even try to catch up. Now, I'm not saying he would have caught up. Kyle Connor, an electric skater. He's got skill. He's got speed. But you have to try. You have to at least try. What happened to the JT Miller of the playoffs gone by when he was one of the best defensive forwards in the entire league? You could argue that he was the second best defensive forward in the playoffs, at least when it came to containing Connor McDavid. The only player that did it better was Alexander Barkov in the Stanley Cup Finals. After Barkov, Miller had the best job of containing McDavid. He was a defensive beast just 9 months ago. What has happened? I think that if you're going to ship one off, to answer the question, you have to ship off JT Miller. There is absolutely no choice there. Shipping off Pettersson is going to be reminiscent of the Cam Neely for Barry Peterson trade, which is the worst trade in Canucks history, where they sent off Cam Neely and a first-round pick for Barry Peterson, who largely thanks to injuries, career disintegrated just 2 years later, and Cam Neely, of course, ends up being a Hall of Famer. If you trade Pettersson, it is going to be that bad. The one issue with trading Miller, however, is that he has a full no-movement clause, so he can pick and choose where he goes and what the trade looks like. So he has said privately that he is willing to waive for a quote-unquote good situation. So we all know what that means. JT Miller wants to be sent to a contending team. But the issue is with contending teams, what contending team has the cap space right now to take on a full $8 million contract at the years that he has left? He's still got 5 years after this one. That goes into his late 30s. So between the no movement clause, the fact that the contract goes in well into his 30s, I think that his value, Canucks fans are going to be surprised at how little he gets back in a trade. And it just feels like the only option where the Canucks come out on top is if these two can figure out their squabbles and remain on the same team. Because I think if you trade either one, you got to trade Miller over Pettersson, but you're losing a Miller trade, you're losing a Pettersson trade. The only way you come out on top is if those two can reconcile their differences and figure out ways to remain Canucks for the rest of their contracts.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I think if you had to trade one, it's got to be Miller. There's a 5-year age gap. Miller's 31, Pettersson's 26. JT Miller's had kind of locker room issues in the past. Obviously, he's a very hard-nosed, very stuff. He kind of reminds me of a Blake Wheeler who we had in Winnipeg. Just his attitude which is like it's not just a bad thing. But with these kind of newer generation of players like Pettersson, you can't really be as hard-nosed and as hard on some of these younger guys I'm kind of seeing. So I think if you have to move one, it's got to be Miller. You're right. You probably won't be winning the trade. But if something has to be done, it has to be done. But the best outcome is that whatever is going on, they move past it and start playing well again. Because both of them are having a bad year. Probably both of their worst seasons of their last couple of years. For Vancouver. So the sooner those guys can kind of get going and right the ship and start playing good hockey again, I think you're going to see Vancouver's I think the team kind of wins and loses by those guys. They're the guys who kind of drive the offense through your forward depth. So when those guys get going, I think you might see Vancouver start going in the standings. And if not, then look out. Calgary, St. Louis, those are teams that are coming for that last wild card spot right now. So it's kind of a make it or break it time for Vancouver, right now as before the deadline. And I still think Vancouver is going to make some moves. But things have to start turning around soon, because I would be, worried about Vancouver missing the playoffs. And then you're kind of in that mushy middle of, finishing 9th to 12th where you're not getting a good draft pick. So you really got to do everything you can, I think, to squeeze into the playoffs. And that kind of hinges on, like I said, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson kind of figuring it out and playing some good hockey again. Because I think fans are kind of getting sick of this whole situation. And I can tell you're you're pretty frustrated, with the team, with the way things are going lately, and obviously tonight's game with the Jets. I'm seeing the comments here on YouTube. It's they're kind of saying the same thing. Miller looks like a nobody tonight, perhaps all year. At this point, something's got to give. Totally agree. So I'm kind of curious to see what's gonna happen going forward. So I'll do a quick ad read here. I don't think we're doing LaRouche anymore. I don't know. I'll skip that one, I guess, and do a different one for Game On. Game On Winnipeg, which we don't even have yet, but I've been doing these ad reads for them all year. So Game Over has you covered after the game. But in order to get ready to watch the Jets and the Canucks, you've got to get your Game On too. So Game On is a short-form daily news podcast covering everything you need to know about the Winnipeg Jets, Vancouver Canucks, and all the other Canadian markets. Debuting soon. Get all of your Jets news in under 10 minutes, Monday through Friday on the Game Over Winnipeg YouTube channel and in podcast form, which you can find at thegameovernetwork.com/pages/Winnipeg or /Vancouver. Like I said, we haven't had a Game On Winnipeg show this season.
Yeah, I can speak a little to this because I was just in a meeting a couple days ago with a bunch of people from the Game Over network, and we are going to be launching Game Over across all channels sooner rather than later. But I know that everyone wants to take a kind of approach of let's get this right rather than trying to rush out content. But it will be soon. I'm quite excited for Game On. I did a couple earlier on in the year when we were trying to get it going off the rip, but they didn't end up working out too well. So they are going to be coming soon. I can confirm that. I haven't been in the meeting yet. It's gonna be really fun content. I really like the kind of the idea of being able to get short form daily stuff just before the game. So for you, the viewer, it will be just a couple minutes watch to be able to understand exactly what the points are heading into each team's games. And if you've got a busy life and you want to get news in just a couple minutes, that's what it's going to be for. So I'm quite excited for it. But you're right, it hasn't debuted just yet. Don't think we have an exact date set as of right now. But yeah, it's going to be awesome when it does finally release.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to see it's going to be happening soon. I know I've been kind of doing these ad reads for them, I believe, for every single Jets game I've done this year. So it's nice to see that's gonna come soon. And then definitely want to get it right if you're gonna start launching it. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's gonna happen with that. Are there any more rants that you want to kind of go through with Vancouver, or should I start?
Just before we move to Winnipeg, because there's a lot to talk about for Winnipeg. It was an awesome game. There is one more thing that I've got to get out of the way for Vancouver.
Sure.
This is the game we have been waiting for the entire year. Now, the Canucks have had health problems and major injury problems all season long. This is not an unknown fact. This is not a surprise. Tonight, with Filip Hronek coming back, this is the closest we have seen the Canucks to full health all season long, and that's the performance that the Canucks provide. That's the performance of the Canucks at their peak. This is peak Canucks hockey, everybody. This is what it looks like. Rick Tocchet's systems are never going to allow the Canucks to get more than 20 shots on goal, it feels. Seriously, I think I can count the amount of games the Canucks have broken 30 shots on a hand that's missing a few fingers. It is seriously a detrimental strategy for the Canucks offense. And I think that the way that the strategy appears to be is just try to keep it a close game in the third and pray to God that either star power or lucky bounce goes your way. It's unsustainable. And when your team, again, this is the best Canucks roster we've seen all year long, and that's the performance. The only person who was missing from tonight's lineup was Dakota Joshua. And you can't say missing a third-line winger makes the difference between a 6-1 loss and a competitive hockey game. It wouldn't have. Especially not the Dakota Joshua we've seen in the games that we've seen him this year. He hasn't looked great. And I think that for Canucks fans, it's getting to the point of the season where you actually need to see something tangible for the Canucks to have belief in this team. Because right now, once again, this was the best lineup we've seen all year long, and we got hammered by the Jets. And it wasn't even remotely close. The only player that you could even argue looked a little bit okay, not even good, okay, was Nils Höglander, who had some really great energy shifts in the first period, albeit his lack of wanting to shoot the puck was still very evident until finally in the third when he was able to strip the defender of the puck and get a goal. And even then, by that point, the game was so far out of hand. It's just a consolation. Hey, at least we didn't allow a shutout. So really at this point, Canucks fans, I think that a lot of people are starting to really get stressed about this team. Because games in the past, 10th game of the season, you're like, okay, lots of runway left for the Canucks to get healthy and figure things out. The Canucks are healthy. It's now time to figure things out. It's the last game of a long road trip. You've got a bit of a homestand ahead. Canucks have really struggled at home. This is a make-or-break stretch of the season for Vancouver. You cannot let these next few games slip. At the very least, you have to put on a better performance than that pathetic, abysmal, miserable performance that was put on the ice tonight. Not a single player should be happy with their performance tonight.
You're right. Make it or break it for the Vancouver Canucks, that's for sure. And we'll see what kind of moves are ahead. I think you're going to anticipate some kind of trade to bolster the lineup. Rutherford's kind of known for that, as I alluded to. And let's see what happens, because this is, either Vancouver's going to, get back into this and really latch on to that, that playoff spot, or they're going to fall. Because, something that I kind of thought Calgary would do, and Calgary hasn't really fallen off yet. The Blues are making a push. Even Utah is playing pretty good hockey as of late. So this is a very important part of the schedule coming up for the Vancouver Canucks, and we're gonna see what they're made of, and if they're a playoff team or not. So it's gonna be exciting, probably nerve-wracking hockey for Canucks fans, but it's gonna be exciting. I'm seeing in the chat. If you don't shoot, you can't score. Simple as that. You got if Taka goes, who will take over the bench? It's too bad this season was not the way many Canucks fans imagined it would be. I was not convinced when Talk thought more quality shots than quantity. That's another question. If Rick Tocchet's on the way out, or if he's going to be able to pull these troops together, I wonder if he's going to be the guy or not to lead the Canucks to some more playoff, appearances. What do you think about the whole Tocchet situation?
Well, it's another lose-lose situation. This core has gone through 3 coaches in 4 years. You've got a reigning Jack Adams winner behind the bench right now. If you fire him, what does that say about the team? Borderline uncoachable at this point. You've tried different styles of coaches. So you've gone Travis Green, who's quite similar to Rick Tocchet, structured, systematic hockey. Now, Travis Green had his issues, that's to be sure. You could make a very, very good argument that Green was very hampered by Jim Spending's structure of the team and how he constructed the roster. But whatever, didn't work out with him, you move on. Bruce Boudreau could not be more different than both Green and Tocchet. Exactly the opposite. No systems whatsoever. Free hockey. It just feels like there's no structure. He just wants the skilled players to go out and run around the ice. Unlike Tocchet, who's trying to win every game 1-0, Bruce Boudreau was trying to win every game 8-7, Now you've got Rick Tocchet. Structure and more structure is what the name of Tocchet's game is. And last year, when he first brought it in, he took a defensive team that was struggling to keep the puck out of the net and turned it into one of the best defensive cores in hockey. However, this year, you could argue too much personnel turnover. You could argue players regressing. Whatever you want to argue, it is not working. And the scary thing with Rick Tocchet is that we have seen absolutely no adaptation whatsoever from Tocchet as he's faced adversity. We didn't see adaptation in the playoffs. Now, again, the playoffs were working pretty well, so you don't necessarily feel the need to in those playoffs. But this year, we're over halfway through the season, and we haven't seen a single thing being changed. We've seen next to no shakeup of the lines. We've seen next to no shakeup of the personnel. And I just think that Tocchet's strategies right now aren't working. But here's why I say it's a lose-lose situation. What are you going to do if you bring in yet another coach? Quinn Hughes has already come out and said that he doesn't want to have to go through learning a whole new coach. Sure, you might get that new coach bump right off the bat. We've seen that happen to basically every team that's brought in a new coach this year. But as we're seeing in Boston, that new coach bump only lasts so long before you start running into some legitimate issues when it comes to systems and structure. So I don't think you can let go of Tocchet. I think you have to try and get things to figure out with Rick Tocchet behind the bench. And whether that is Rutherford making a trade, as you alluded to. But my big question is, have the Canucks earned the right to a big trade? Has this team shown you enough to the point where you feel good about going out and spending future assets on upgrading this team now? I mean, seriously, if this team is not even in a playoff spot and getting blown out by legitimate contenders like your Winnipeg Jets, is one player going to actually make the difference for this team? I think not. So I think that we need to see some improvement from within before you can look to outward sources to try to improve this team. So we can move on to start talking some Jets hockey, because I feel bad I've hijacked it with so many Vancouver rants. But this has easily been the most depressing game that I've been a part of for Game Over all year long. There's not been a single game where I have had this much resentment and anger after a game. At least I got to watch a different great Canadian team. Maybe the cup will come back to Canada. Go Winnipeg.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's kind of shambles in Vancouver right now, but the Jets are having a banner season. Obviously, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele are both top 6 in the Rocket Richard race. They both have 26 goals now on the season. They have Kyle Connor's at 59 points, Mark Scheifele's at 52 points, and Gabriel Velarde's a point per game player as well. I think 41 points in 45 games. The Jets are, a deep, tough to play against team, a very good defensive structure. The best goaltender in the world, Connor Hellebuck, that's already won his 3rd Vezina trophy. We'll just say it now. He's 26-6-2 with a .930 save percentage.
Oh yeah, it's not even close. I think we're halfway through this year and he has already won it. Really quickly, because I want to throw a coaching question at you. How much of this is due to the coaching changes in Winnipeg? Because they were already a pretty good team, but let's not pretend that they had this level of success in years gone by. I think that Arniel has done an incredible job, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Arniel's been fantastic, and it kind of all started with when Rick Bowness came in for a little 2-year stint before retirement. He really kind of changed the Jets, how they played. They became a lot more defensive. They built a pretty good defensive structure. Last year, I believe our defense was near the top in the league. And then, with Bowness stepping down and Scott Arniel coming in and taking over, Scott's really taken the reins. And I've kind of let the Jets, play with the way their defense structure is so good. It really allows their offense to kind of open up and play freely, and that's what we kind of saw tonight. The Jets were able to score or just have all these quality chances, but also they're not giving anything up on the defensive side. So a lot of that is going to coaching. I know Scott Arniel hasn't really been talked about, for the Jack Adams, and I'm not saying that he's going to win it, but he's definitely, a top 5 coach.
He's second in my mind. If I had a vote, he'd be second, only behind Carberry and Washington.
Yeah, Carberry's the other one I see, just because Washington's doing so well, unexpectedly. But yeah, Arniel deserves to be right up there. And Arniel had a tough, first NHL coaching experience, I believe in 08-09 with the Columbus Blue Jackets, did not go well. He's obviously learned a lot since then. He's learned under a couple of, pretty good NHL coaches while he worked as an assistant coach and with the Rangers and the Jets and a couple other spots. He's a really good coach. The players like him. He's likable. He can be tough at times. He can be fiery on the bench. Very good with the media. Very good with the community. He's married a Winnipegger. He played for the Jets. Obviously in the 1980s. He lives here. Year round. He's just really a guy who's really bought in and really loves this city. And the city's loved him back. And maybe he'll be the guy that can lead the Jets. To the cup or to another long playoff run. It's something that this this fan base definitely deserves. So we'll see what happens, but I guess in the short term, we just want to get past Game 5 in the first round, because that's where we've fallen the last couple of years. But for now, we definitely look like we're well on our way. So a good amount of that goes to Scott Arniel for sure.
What do you think it's going to take for the Jets to be able to advance in the last couple of rounds? Because I'm not going to lie, and I mean this is no diss, I have kind of completely lost faith in Winnipeg. I think that it's an awesome team, but we see this every year. I made a comparison a little while back that I kind of feel like the Winnipeg Jets are the Toronto Maple Leafs of the West. Now, not quite as egregious as the Maple Leafs of the West. I know. I'm so sorry. But we've seen them, qualify for the playoffs, look like a legitimate contender, and then get beaten down in the postseason. And I mean, I know that the last series against the Avalanche was just a weird one. And I know a lot of people point to Connor Hellebuck's numbers on paper. I don't think it was as much of Hellebuck's fault as people were saying. I think that if you look at how badly the defense collapsed in front of him in that Colorado series, his numbers can be better explained. And actually, if you remember his post-game quote after they lost or were eliminated, Connor Hellebuck saying, "I felt like I played my best hockey ever," and he had over a 5 goals against average. But what do you think it's going to take for this Winnipeg Jets to be able to take the next step in the postseason? Because right now, they have sewered my playoff bracket 3 years in a row, and I don't feel good about picking them for a fourth.
No, it's totally understandable. Like, yeah, the Jets have definitely the last, 2 years losing to, but they're not losing to, they're losing to pretty good hockey teams. Like Vegas was unbelievable when they knocked out the Jets in 5 games, and Colorado was on a totally different level. How they totally, ran over the Jets. The special teams. McKinnon and Nichushkin were, all world in that series. And I think there was, I think, a deep dive someone did on all some videos of all the goals Hellebuck let in that series, and there are really only a couple that he should have had. Like these were, no look, the goals against him. So the series against Colorado definitely wasn't on Hellebuck in any stretch. The playoffs are weird, for the Jets. We obviously had that big run in 2018 when we were probably the best team in the NHL, and we lost, in the conference final to Vegas, which hurt. The next season we were a top, 5 team in the league again, and then got lost to an upstart St. Louis team that went on to win the cup. So we've kind of been in that mix for then. Then we had a couple years off, and then the Jets now they've been a top 5 team for the last 2 seasons. And it's going to take for the Jets to make a run. It's going to take carrying over that system, that style of hockey that's been so successful in the regular season. And it's obviously the game gets tougher in the playoffs. And the last couple of years, the Jets haven't been able to, to up their level. I would say, I think other teams who they played against have really upped their level, because as we know, the playoffs are a totally different beast. The games are a lot more physical. There's a lot less space. There's less space for, the Kyle Connors, the Mark Scheifele's, the more, I won't say soft. Well, I guess you could say soft, but they're not, power forwards exactly. So there's not a lot more space for those guys to make opportunities and plays. I think in past years, the Jets, deadline acquisitions haven't, panned out in the playoffs. Looking at Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli from last year, who were ghosts in that Colorado series. And obviously, there's some holes in the Jets lineup that they're going to have to fill for the playoffs. I think they need a second line center, or at least a middle 6 forward. They need to shore up their defense. They need to get 1 or 2 defensemen. To be able to be like a Stanley Cup team to go on a deep playoff run. And I think what the coaching staff has kind of alluded to is just, the playoffs are such a weird, not random, but it's, you really just got to get in and anything can kind of happen. And the Jets maybe were, gripping the sticks a little bit too tight these last couple of years, but you really just got to get into the playoffs, and it doesn't matter where you're seated, really. You got to play good. You got to play good hockey for those stretch of games. And even if you win the President's Trophy, I think you're something like 5% to win the Stanley Cup. So it really there's definitely an element of randomness, at least in the first couple of rounds. And I really think I wouldn't go off of years past if you're filling out brackets and predicting Stanley Cup winners. I wouldn't really go off of the last couple of years. For the Jets in this case. They do look like a little bit different of a team. If they lose again in 5, I don't know what to say. But I think that this Jets team does look, a lot more stronger, a lot more battle tested. I don't think they're going to give in too easily if they get down in a series. I think they're going to be able to problem solve and find solutions more than they have, the last couple of years. I think Hellebuck's playing even better hockey than he has in years past. I think when you have the best goalie in the world, you always have a chance in the playoffs. And if Hellebuck can just have like a really good playoffs again, I don't I don't think many teams are going to be able to beat the Jets in a 7-game series if Connor Hellebuck's playing, like he's playing right now in the regular season. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of a rant for me on defending why the Jets can go on a run. But I really think this is the year that they can not only get out of the first round, but get to the conference finals or beyond again.
No, I could see that completely. I definitely really like the way the Jets roster is constructed. I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade set up the team to be an absolute wagon. I think that's one of the worst trades in Kings history. My good buddy who's been on the show several times as a Kings fan, I would never let him hear the end of it, even though Kemper's been good for them this year. But that trade single-handedly really set up the Jets. I just love the fact that every line really feels like a threat. I mean, when you look at the names that you've got on the fourth line, that would be a pretty respectable third line for a lot of other teams. So, just to quickly answer some questions from the chat. They are Vancouver questions, but I do like some of these questions. So what do people think is going to happen with Talkett? Is he going to be gone soon? And what about Besser? Is he gone also? So we addressed Talkett already. I think that they're going to keep him for at least the rest of the year just because, A, not really any great options to bring in middle of the year, and B, reigning Jack Adams award winner, you got to at least give him till the end of the season. Besser's the interesting one, the really interesting one. His contract expires at the end of this season, so the Canucks need to either choose to renew him or choose to lose him. Honestly, at the start of the year, I thought for sure they'd be re-signing Brock Besser. Now that we're halfway through, I really am not certain that they're going to be. At this point, the Canucks, do they feel like they can win with this core? Maybe they felt that way last year, but this year, I mean, the team has just not been good enough. And I mean, what better way to try to shake up a team than by moving a star player? Okay, if you don't think you can move Pettersson or Miller because you're going to lose those trades, what about Brock Besser? We know Jim Rutherford's a really aggressive general manager. It would not surprise me one modicum to see Brock Besser moved at the trade deadline. Now, the issue is that it would have to be at the trade deadline because, if you go to the end of the year, he's just going to walk away. I do think that it's well known he would take a discount to stay in Vancouver, but discounts are never as much as people think that they are. I mean, if someone takes a $250K discount over an 8-year deal, that's several million off the total AAV. That's their version of a discount. But, the difference between an $8.5 million deal and an $8.3 million deal, and the salary cap is nothing. So I don't know, honestly, with Brock Besser. At the start of the year, I'd have said he's a sure bet to re-sign. At this point, I think that there's a good chance the Canucks might move on from him, especially given the fact that Jonathan Lekkerimaki has looked pretty comfortable at an NHL role. And if you want Jonathan Lekkerimaki to be a big part of the Canucks, that's the role he needs to step into, is the Brock Besser role. You're going to need a sniper for that line, either playing alongside Pettersson or JT Miller. So if you think Lekkerimaki is going to be ready to elevate his game to a level where he can replace Brock Besser as soon as next year, I think you can let him walk. But honestly, if you let him walk, it's a huge gamble. So it's a really interesting situation to try to follow. Of course, not really a whole lot of actual information, just speculation right now for Vancouver. But the Brock Besser situation, definitely one to monitor moving forward.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Besser is another guy who's, I wouldn't say, well, I guess you can say underperforming a little bit compared to last season. I think just a lot of the Vancouver Canucks players, if you're looking at purely stats wise, they're not really putting up the numbers as they have in the last couple of years. It seems like a lot of guys are having down years. And even at that, they're still a borderline playoff team, which is, I guess, encouraging. Because it really hasn't been a great season, I would say, for Canucks. And then with all the Pettersson Miller drama, Demko being injured and whatnot, for you guys to still be in the mix, to get that 7th or 8th spot, I do think is a bit of a positive. You really just need the players. It's more on the players, to turn it around for this home stretch. And we'll see. We're going to see what the Canucks are made of in these next couple of games. It would really be nice if the Canucks could kind of go on a bit of a run before the Four Nations Cup break. And then after that players get back from that, then it's really, pedal to the metal, and it's a sprint to the finish, for those last couple playoff spots. So not all negative. There are some positives to take, but you really need those guys to be playing better. I know Brock Besser is unrestricted free agent after this year. I'm curious if he likes where things are headed, or if he's gonna hit July 1st. I believe he'll probably be due for a raise from his 6.650 cap hit. I think teams on the open market would pay him $8 million.
Yeah.
Probably there'd be some teams, I think. So it depends on if he wants to stay in Vancouver or not long term. This is kind of his time to get that big contract. He'll be, I think, 28 years old. So I think this contract he's going to cash in, an 8x8 or 8x7, something like that.
No, I agree. I think that the contract is going to be a huge risk for teams, though. I think the only teams that should be signing Brock Besser are teams that think they can win in the next 3 or 4 years. I am calling it now, and this isn't a hot take. Everyone I've talked to has the same opinion. That contract is going to be an albatross in the last couple of years. Brock Besser right now at 28 is one of the worst skaters in the entire National Hockey League. Now, he gets by due to his work ethic, his amazing shot, and his hockey IQ, so he can get himself into positions to score even without the skating speed. That being said, if you're one of the worst skaters in the league at 28, how are you going to be at 33, 34, 35? Yeah. So I think that, teams are going to get a lot out of Brock Besser in the first couple years of that contract. He was probably the Canucks' best player in the playoffs last year. He was a beast, and he had a great two-way game too. But I tell you what, if you're not a team that thinks they can win in the next 3-4 years max, you should not be even looking at Brock Besser. But I agree with your assessment. I think he'll get at least 8 on the open market.
For sure. I think Besser will definitely be a buyout candidate towards the end of his this next contract he's going to sign. But he's going to definitely help out a team in the short term for those first couple of years of the contract. And like I said, it's obviously just a bit of a down year in Vancouver. I'm looking at the points. After Quentin Hughes, who's obviously leading the team in points, it's Connor Garland, who's kind of surprisingly, outscoring Miller, Pettersson, DeBrusk, Besser this season. It's a little bit bleak. And let's see if they can turn it around. I think the chat has been pretty depressed tonight. I know I never really get people watching the Game Over Winnipeg show, so it's nice when we have a live. We got some people here. Tuning in for better or for worse.
I kind of want to depress the audience more, because I still have more stats that are just going to make the Vancouver fans even sadder. So, Vancouver fans, you want to feel even worse about this team? We have been overperforming by all measurable analytics. This team has been outperforming what they should be at. Well, now, we were PDO merchants last year, with one of the highest PDOs in recorded history since that stat was invented. For reference, an average PDO for a completely statistically 50% average down the middle, performing as you should be team is 100. The Canucks have 101. It fluctuates. A small number like that, 101, is a lot higher than 100. For record, the Canucks' statistical outlying season was 104.8. So the Canucks have 101. We are outperforming expectations, and we're not even in a wild card spot. So I hate to be the proprietor of doom and gloom. I really do, because I love this team. I want them to succeed. And I know the Canucks media, of which I am a part, is often negative. But it's hard not to be negative about this season, when this season was supposed to be the season. Second round exit last year, 1 game away from beating the team that made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. This was supposed to be teams taking a step forward. Huge offseason additions. And the worst part about it is the offseason additions, for the most part, have been our best players. They've pretty much all panned out. Kiefer Sherwood, playing at about 10 times his contract value. Kevin Lankinen, out of nowhere, one of the best goaltenders in the league. Not tonight. He was not good tonight. But I promise you, if you watch him outside of tonight, he's been great. It's been the Canucks' own players internally that have all taken a step backwards. And I mean, you could look at some other offseason additions that you want more from. Jake DeBrusk, I would say, has lived up to expectations without exceeding them. He's been what you hope to get from that contract. Obviously, Vinny Desharnais has been a catastrophic failure, but at the very least, that's $2 million. But here's why. The biggest reason why this season had to be it for Vancouver. The Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout this year, just $400,000. That's nothing on the salary cap. I mean, that's less than league minimum. Next year, $4.4 million. You're basically adding an entire another player to not play for you. That money that you want to re-sign Kevin Lankinen, well, that's where that money's going. It's going into Oliver Ekman-Larsson's pockets over in the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's really tough for Vancouver because the stars aligned for this season to be the season. And right now, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, I totally get the frustration for sure, and I think the chat's kind of calling on for some more Zach rants for sure. There's some just from tonight's game, some moments like we used to have Tyler Myers on the Jets. Tonight was a reason I think the Jets don't miss him at all. He was laughably bad in some cases. Derek Forbert, another Jets, kind of cast away. He had a rough night. It was, there wasn't a lot of, good that I saw from, Vancouver's side. And maybe if Vancouver put up, a little bit more of a fight, it wouldn't be such a negative post game show. And, it's hard to I know expectations were very high this season, but when this kind of feud goes public between your two best forwards, it's really not gonna that ain't happening on a Stanley Cup contender during the season. This whole Miller Pettersson thing has really thrown a wrench into the Canucks season, and it's got to come to a head soon. It's got to get to a resolution. Because these are two players that are supposed to be, an $11 million, $8 million player that are playing to about, half of that.
If that. Right now. No, honestly, I think the biggest issue isn't necessarily that there is a rift, but it's their lack of ability to figure it out. This is not at all even close to the first time we've seen a big rift. Now, I'm also a big Senators fan, so I'll use the Hoffman-Carlson rift as an example. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know that drama, I'm not going to get into it because it's a long story, but huge drama, and on paper, way more than what Miller and Pettersson have. And that team was still able to put together arguably the best run in that franchise's history, at least since 2007, making it to the Game 7 of the conference finals in overtime, no less. So it's not like you can have players that don't get along and can't have success. It's been proven in the past that teams can win and win handily without success. That's what's so worrying about the Canucks, is that they're letting this rift get to them in such a magnitude. Because it is so obvious. It's so evident every night. Rick Tocchet can't even play them together. He can't put them on the same line. Long gone are the days of the lotto line. Everyone remember that? Oh, good old 649, Besser, Miller, and Pettersson. Let's put them out there to try to get us a goal when we need it most. Now that line feels like a thing of the past. Their cohesion feels like a thing of the past. And I do still have faith that they're going to be able to figure it out. We've heard some reports that things are getting closer, but we also heard a very worrying report today from Chris Johnston, one of the NHL's media insiders, who said that there is another star player on the Canucks team that is upset with JT Miller. Who else on the Canucks is a star player? Okay, so we already know about Pettersson. The only other star in my mind is Quinn Hughes. So if Hughes and Pettersson are kind of upset with Miller's antics, then you kind of are going to need to trade him. So I think that he needs to figure it out. He needs to dial it back in. And I will say, though, I do think that it has been blown slightly out of proportion. At a certain point, I really hope that they can figure things out. There's so much speculation on this Miller-Pettersson rift. I think that the actual things that we've heard have been so little. And I just wish that we could turn back time and handle this rift the way Boston handled it. Because there was reports coming out of Boston 2 days ago that their two star players, Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, were having a major rift. What happened right away? Immediately, both Pastrnak and Marchand took to the media reporting saying, hey, There is no rift between us. This is a false report. They posted pictures of each other. They did a media scrum together, which, by the way, we still have yet to see Miller and Pettersson do a media scrum together since this whole thing has been put out. And then the Boston Twitter account was posting all this lovey-dovey thing about how Marchand and Pastrnak get along. And boom, just 2 days later, there's not a soul in Boston talking about it. It's a non-issue. If Vancouver had just been able to do that, I think would be in a completely different place when it comes to reporting. But no, it's the biggest story in the NHL. Every single reporter has Miller and Pettersson at the top of their trade bait deadlines, and we just can't seem to get away with it. So nothing is perfect. I love that reference saying, Q, sure, if we could turn back time, maybe the Canucks would actually be a good team. But here we are on the outside looking in. Calgary's ahead of us in the standings, and that's where we are halfway through the season.
Yeah, like unlike the the Marchand Pastrnak, like the feud, like the Miller and Pettersson like feud is obviously, it's not a fake story. Like, it's obviously, there's a lot of truth to it. I saw like when Bruce Boudreau, like he was even knew about it when he was coaching the team, a few years back. So it's something that is there. At the end of the day, these guys are professional hockey players getting paid a lot of money. They should be able to. Put things aside. You're playing on a team with 25 other individuals. You're not gonna like every single person on the team. I don't know if I like 25 people like in Winnipeg. But you have to some of these guys are your teammates. You got to be able to play with them. You have to be able to play at a high level with anybody that you're lined up with. When you're a supposed superstar in the National Hockey League. And for these two players to, just not be able to figure it out at all, to let this thing become such a major, major news story in the NHL this year. Not a good look on the players, not a good look on the organization. And I think we're all just waiting for some resolution to it, because it's kind of gone on long enough. I know was this connected to Miller's absence earlier in the year? So that's kind of where I thought it all started from. Did that ever come out why he even left the team for that period that he did?
Not officially. Now, unofficially, there was a lot of reporting coming out that what happened was So what happened with Miller's absence is he got completely pulled from, I forget which game it was, but a game in the third period by Rick Talk. He got fully benched, didn't play him another minute in the whole third period, and then he was absent for a period of about 2 weeks' time. Now, what it has been speculated by reporters who know much more than I is that he said something to someone in the locker room that crossed a line. Now, we've known for years that JT Miller is all about accountability. He wants to hold other players to an incredibly high standard that he likes to try to hold himself to. My issue with that is that JT Miller, you can only do that if you are actually holding yourself to that same standard. And he just has not performed that this year. So I think, again, unofficially what we've heard is that the team requested that he sit out for a few games, try to figure out the issue. It ended up being quite a few games before he gets back into the lineup. But I think that we're still seeing that. He goes too hard on other guys in the locker room, especially Pettersson. And I think it's other guys that he deems as maybe soft. JT Miller, for all of his faults, definitely not a soft player. Wears his heart in his sleeve. When he's playing well, he works really hard. Super physical player. And I understand wanting to hold people accountable. I mean, it's just like a workplace. It is a workplace. You want to hold your coworkers accountable, and you want to hold them to the standard that you believe the crest, the Canucks logo should represent. The issue herein lies, well, there's two issues. Firstly, you have to hold yourself to the same standard, and JT Miller has not had a banner year. He's had 2 great years in Vancouver in the past 2 seasons, but this year it has not been anywhere near as good, and that's no secret. The other thing is that there are limitations to what you can say to your teammates, and if you are crossing those lines, even if in your own mind you're not crossing those lines, if the teammate you are saying to thinks you're crossing those lines and is going to start to take some of those things personally and play worse because of it, you have to find a way to dial back. I get wanting to lead, and I get wanting to lead in the way that you deem leadership should be. However, you aren't the captain. You aren't the guy that, at the end of the day, says what goes. From everything that we've heard from outside of the locker room, Quinn Hughes has been an exemplary captain for Vancouver, and he is the one leading both on ice and off of it. And so I honestly think JT Miller should try to be a bit less vocal in the locker room. I think the other big thing that was a huge oversight from Canucks management is that there currently isn't any pushback in the locker room. So when JT Miller goes on these kind of tangents where he really tries to, where apparently, again, nothing I've seen personally, I'm not in the locker room, but where apparently he'll kind of yell at teammates, really rip into them. Last year, there were some players that would fight back, and from the reports that we heard, those players were Nikita Zadorov and Ian Cole. They're no longer on the roster. And so apparently there is very, very few people that are willing to stand up to JT Miller in the locker room right now. And so because of that, it leads to kind of him bowling over other people's opinions in the locker room. And so if anything, I think that he is the one that is more of a culprit than Pettersson. I think it's his fault, not entirely his fault that we have the rift, but I think of all the players, it's definitely more his fault than anyone else. So I really do want to see JT Miller be able to figure things out, but the longer that this continues to go on, the less faith that I have that it will be resolved.
Yeah, I think both can be true. Like obviously Miller's a hard like a very hard nosed, very like gets on teammates, I think, and obviously Pettersson's the brunt of that because he's an $11 million player who is obviously considered soft by JT and a lot of fans are probably around the league is Pettersson is a superstar, but on the soft side, like a Kyle Connor for the Jets, a player that doesn't play a physical game, a player that can easily disappear in big hockey games such as the the postseason. So kind of like the sun and the moon, like both can be true for sure. It just seems like the more we talk about it, it seems like the the solution is that you might have to, you might get into a JT Miller trade. I think those talks might amplify if the Canucks don't, start winning some hockey games more consistently over these next stretch. And especially if those two aren't, scoring points, if those two aren't, playing at a point per game, over a point per game level, you're just going to see it more talked about in the media. I'm sure the GMs are listening to calls right now. Probably has a very high price tag on both. But I think if you are going to trade one, it's got to be JT Miller. And then, look out for that return because I think it's going to be underwhelming for Vancouver Canucks fans, for a player that was, a 100-point player, just a year ago.
Yeah, a 100-point player who was also a defensive beast in the playoffs. Again, on paper, this should be a great player. However, Elfrin, I love this comment. Really great comment. To add to that, Zach, remember the argument on ice between Luke Schenn and JT Miller a few years ago? After that, Luke Schenn's no longer on the roster. Well, we have heard reports that this has been an issue in the locker room ever since JT Miller was brought in. Brad Richardson, who played briefly for the team in the 21-22 season, was on the, I believe it was Missing Curfew podcast earlier on this season, and he was talking about how even back then, it was a noticeable issue in the locker room, and that he at one point had said to JT Miller, hey, you go too hard on this kid, in reference to Pettersson, you're gonna lose him. I thought that was a great quote, great bit of reporting. Now, he was only on the team for, 30, 40 games, so how much did he really see? Not that much. But that's exactly the problem. A player that's only playing 20 to 30 games for your team can spot this issue, and it's still an issue multiple years later. If they have not been able to resolve this issue in 4 years' time, what's to make anyone believe that they're going to be able to in the next 4 months before the playoffs, So it's tough. I really wanted to figure it out. I love JT Miller. I love chanting JT Miller in Rogers Arena. It's awesome. Everyone gets so into it. You hear the first J, then everyone gets a T, and then by the time it's Miller, everyone in the building's screaming. He's such a talented player. There's no question about it. I love his style of game. I think his style of game of any one of the Canucks translates best to playoff hockey. But at the end of the day, if you are trying to steamroll a locker room and you're creating rifts with multiple players, there's only so much your team can put up with before you have to make a decision on whether or not he can be a long-term part of the future for Vancouver. But it's just unfortunate because I think that his trade value was so infinitely high even just 9 months ago. Whether now, between the reports that have come out, between his no-movement clause, seriously, I really don't think Canucks fans are prepared for just how underwhelming this return is going to be if JT Miller is dealt. The cards are so stacked against Jim Rutherford. So we'll see. It's a tough time to be a Canucks fan and a great time to be a Winnipeg Jets fan. Before we move on to potentially ending anything, I really do want to shout out just how great the Winnipeg Jets season is having and how awesome Some of the depth players that they've had are stepping up. Someone that I personally wanted to highlight was Alex Iafallo, because I always really liked his game as a king, and he got really depth minutes, and he didn't always look great in those depth minutes. Well, he hasn't earned necessarily a higher role in the Winnipeg Jets. However, what he has earned is a lot more trust. He has been a great depth player for them all season long, and I think that's made evident by just how relied upon he is on that fourth line and how much depth scoring they have been able to rely upon. Obviously, the superstars shine over there. Kyle Connor, wow, he really might win the Rocket Richard. And I think Mark Scheifele took not being named to the Four Nations Cup so personally. The tear he has been on since not getting named. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that was a snub. When they were first debating the rosters at the start of the season, I kind of understood why he'd be on the outside looking in. But mind you, rosters weren't finalized till November 2nd, and he had an awesome start to the year. And then only even more awesome as the night goes on. Actually, the hockey stat cards, which compile data from both Natural Stat Trick and the Athletics model from Dom Lucian, Mark Scheifele played a pretty much flawless game tonight. Not perfect, but really flawless. He didn't have a negative bone in his body, both individual offense and team offense when he was on the ice, and then individual defense and team defense on the ice. He was at least average or above average in every measurable statistic tonight. And I think that just Mark Scheifele is such an incredible player. And I think that the Winnipeg Jets are sneakily full of players that just are going to be nose to the grindstone and working really, really hard. And I think that's something that Jets fans should really, really be hyped about here. And this really might be the year for Winnipeg to have a deep playoff run just like they did in 2018.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, thanks for the kind words on some of the Jets players. Iafallo, Scheifele, all really. There's not a lot of. There's only a couple players I can name that aren't having pretty good seasons. In Winnipeg right now. So they're all kind of pulling on the same rope, and that's why the Jets sit first in the entire National Hockey League this season. And with something that we've been in, for pretty much the entire year, we've been in. First place or second place. So it's definitely feels a lot better than probably being a Canucks fan right now. I'm not going to brag too much, but Jets fans are very content. There's only a couple, upgrades that we're looking to make, only a couple players that are, not playing, to the best of their abilities, which is nice to see. We're having some breakout seasons from some players. And we're getting, another Vezina season from our Vezina buck.
Yeah,
as we call him. So
he's unbelievable. I want to pose another question to you as the Jets representative here. So right now, of course, you guys are top of the Central and actually top of the league, tied for top of the league after tonight's win with the Washington Capitals. I'll ask you, who in the West are you most scared of facing in the playoffs?
Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, I think are the only teams. Just Vegas has had our number, a couple times. They're very deep. They're very deep defensively. Yeah. They have probably the best defense in the league.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, Colorado just from last year. I assume Colorado is going to get, deeper at the deadline like they did last year. Colorado could be a problem again. If they get goaltending, and then Dallas is built. Dallas is a tough out for anybody in the West.
Yeah, they're always a threat.
A playoff team for sure. But yeah, so those are the three teams, and I would say those are the four, top teams in the West: the Jets, Vegas, Colorado, Dallas. I predict one of those teams. Yeah, I don't see Minnesota. I don't see that.
That's what I was going to say. You're skipping over Minnesota because you say the Stars and the Avs, both of whom right now are behind the Wild. So what is it about the Wild you think they're a bit of a paper tiger?
Yeah, the Jets have kind of spanked them in the season. I think we've already beaten them all 4 games this year. We match up well against them. They're a team that does a lot of things similar to the Jets, just the Jets kind of do them better. I know Kirill Kaprizov's been out with injury. I hope that he comes back because he's a big player on my biggest fantasy league. So I'm hoping Kirill Kaprizov comes back. He's and Minnesota is awesome. They're also not very playoff tested yet, so I kind of want to see them get in and have a good series. Maybe hopefully get out of the first round as long as they're not playing the Jets. I don't think they're a team for this year. I think they're a team in the future, especially when the Suter and Parise contracts come off the books and they're able to spend more of the cap next year. So that'll be interesting to see. And then the Jets have kind of always had the Oilers number. Not really worried about them, although obviously what they did last year was pretty incredible. Kings not worried about them. And then any of
they'll lose to Edmonton in the first round. It's all right.
Yeah, I know it's all like there's kind of four big dogs in the West this year. There's a couple teams kind of nipping at them after that. But the West is very deep. I would say the West is even deeper than I would say the Eastern Conference this year for sure. I think there's a lot more top end firepower, playoff built teams in the West than the East. But
yeah,
then again, it wouldn't surprise me if an Eastern Conference team wins the Stanley Cup again.
So I think we'll start to kind of move things towards wrapping this up. It's been a pretty lengthy show already, so hit the 75-minute mark. So if anyone has any questions for us to address, we'll catch them all in the fourth period here for Game Over. I just said Vancouver, Game Over Winnipeg, technically. So if anyone in the chat does have any questions about anything hockey related, it doesn't just have to be Vancouver or Winnipeg. We'll get to it then. Before we do wrap it up, though, I wanted to get your thoughts on the playoff race over in the East. I mean, what an insane playoff race that is. I mean, really, every single team but Buffalo feels like they're in the mix. I mean, right now, there is, for that final wild card spot, 6 points separating, how many teams is that? 8 teams. There is 6 points separating 8 teams. Really, absolutely anyone could come in. Absolutely anyone could fall out. I mean, what are your thoughts about that East playoff race, and who do you think is who do you want to see most getting those final spots?
It's crazy. There's so you're seeing so many teams kind of have these kind of mid-season runs. With Detroit winning 7 in a row, with Montreal going on a run, Ottawa. But obviously the team that I think myself and I think the hockey world wants to see make the playoffs would be the Columbus Blue Jackets, kind of for everything that they've gone through as a franchise these last couple of years. It's been very tough, obviously. But they've been, I would say, one of the biggest stories of the league this year of just how well they've played under Dean Evason. The emergence of Kirill Marchenko,
most underrated player in the league. Yeah,
he's a superstar.
Most underrated player in the league, bar none.
He's a beast. Like, he's 6'4". He plays physical. He scores over a point per game. Like, this guy is like the next, this Russian power forward, and it's awesome to see. And you got a kind of a mini me in Voronkov that plays on the line with him. So they got some other young players that are coming up. Columbus is going to be a team that's going to be, very good these next couple of years. They're deep on the back end. They got a lot of good, up and coming, offensive talent. The goaltending leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's something that can be, improved on, externally. And they're well coached. Dean Evason has really come in. He's really got the Columbus playing the right way. So I think that's a team that I really want to see make the playoffs. And I would love to see Boston miss as well. I know they're 1 point, they're 2 points above Ottawa.
You've just endeared yourself to all of Game Over Vancouver, by the way. If you're a Boston hater, you're welcome on our channel anytime, my friend.
I know. I don't care much for the Bruins. I would be, I would say, I would like Ottawa to get in over Montreal just because they've kind of had a tough go as of late. Montreal's at least made had a deep playoff run the last couple. I think Ottawa would be nice to see them.
Go Sens, baby! Let's go! Let's get the Sens in there. It's been way too long. Bring back 2017.
Yeah.
Sorry. Shout out Senators.
Yeah, go Sens. I'll give a shout out one of my curling teammates, Newfoundland. He's a big Sens fan, so I'll be seeing him next week at the Newfoundland men's curling provincials. And he's a big he's very happy that the Sens have kind of had a very good season, this year. So hopefully they make the playoffs, and Columbus. Hopefully those are the 2 wild card teams, and then the other 6 teams kind of stay in place: Toronto, Florida, Tampa, Washington, Devils, Carolina. What about you?
I mean, no, I couldn't agree more. I really, really love Ottawa. It was my second team, and I would love to see them coming away with that spot. As you said, I'd love to see the Bruins drop out. the Senators get that kind of upper wild card spot. And then the second one, yeah, I'd love the Blue Jackets and the Sens. I really think that is kind of the best option. If you look at who else the teams are, I mean, really, I don't want to see either of the New York teams. They bore me. Pittsburgh, a husk of their former glory. Philadelphia, Michkov's fun. That's it. Montreal is another one that, like, if they weren't eliminating Columbus or Ottawa from the playoffs, I'd love to see them in, because I think Montreal's got a really fun team. But at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, the Blue Jackets, for everything that franchise has been through. I mean, the amount of tragedy that has surrounded that franchise, not just the Gaudreaus, but as well the netminder. Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. From a few years prior. So to see that team getting love, and also it's the team that's been the butt of the joke in the NHL for a long time. I mean, them and the no longer existent Arizona Coyotes have been kind of the teams that are joked about for being irrelevant. So for the Blue Jackets to finally have success is awesome to see. I don't think there's a single NHL fan that dislikes the Blue Jackets. They're such a likable franchise, such a likable young team. And they're a team that really deserves to get a good playoff run. I agree their goaltending is a little suspect at times, but that's the easiest thing to fix via a trade, because just one guy, and goaltender values are low as they've ever been in the NHL in terms of trading. So I think that's, you hit the nail on the head right there. The Sens and the Blue Jackets are the ones that I really want to see get in. I think especially the Senators, because I think the Senators sneakily have a much better chance than people think in the playoffs. They're a team that I think has a lot of ability to get things done, and the goaltending that they have gotten out of both Linus Ullmark, obviously, but also Levi Merilainen has been unbelievable. I mean, I hate how I'm older than NHL players now, but not just NHL players, NHL goaltenders. Goaltenders take longer to develop, but Merilainen, 22 years of age, and he has a 1.53 goals against on the season in 6 games. He's been incredible. And I think a tandem of him and Ullmark is going to lead the Senators to a playoff berth, at least in my hopes and dreams. That's exactly what I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And when the NHL needs to see Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs, that's something that's kind of been long awaited. So,
an Ottawa-Florida series would be the best playoff series of the playoffs, no doubt. Every time those two teams play, the Tkachuk brothers disappoint their parents by punching each other in the face repeatedly. It's awesome to see. Usually Florida comes out on top. I don't like that outcome. But those two teams going head-to-head would be the most entertaining series of the playoffs, for sure.
I believe it, yeah. Those Florida-Ottawa would be awesome. And then also, if Ottawa-Toronto, would be nice to see Ottawa knock out Toronto in the first round. That'd be hilarious. That'd be awesome, too, for sure.
Cool. I think that I'm down to start wrapping things up. On the subject of Ottawa, though, quick shout out to Maud, who makes everything at Game Over possible. All the thumbnails you see are designed by Maud of Game Over Ottawa. Maud is an amazing person, great host as well over for Game Over Ottawa. They run a great ship, so if you check them out as well, all the Game Over networks are just amazing. It's an awesome company to be a part of, but Ottawa do a great job, and I'd like to shout out Maud for all the hard work that she does. So I think that down to start wrapping this up. It's been a great show. Any last points you wanted to make about either the Canucks or the Jets after a really solid 6-1 victory by Winnipeg over Vancouver?
Yeah, well, I think we covered most of it. I think hope everyone enjoyed the show tonight. For the Jets, at least, we're back in action on Thursday night. Another home game against the Seattle Kraken. That's 7. That'll be at 7:00 local. I will be at the game, and then so Brendan Labar, our other Game Over Winnipeg host, he will be doing the post game show for that one. And yeah, I'll be there in person to hopefully take in another Jets win. So what about when's Vancouver in action next?
Yeah, so the Canucks next play against the Los Angeles Kings. That's on Thursday in 2 days' time. And these are some really big games for Vancouver coming up. You've got a bit of a homestand, but not only that, 3 of the 5 games on this homestand are against divisional rivals. You've got 2 against Edmonton, nearly back-to-back, separated by a game against Buffalo, and then, of course, the next one against the Kings. So it's a huge, huge opportunity to try to make up some ground in the standings, and a chance to prove yourself, because if you want to be able to have any sort of playoff success, you're going to almost certainly have to go through either LA or Edmonton in the earlier rounds of the playoffs. So it's a chance to prove your worth against both LA and Edmonton here on an upcoming homestand for Vancouver, and a chance to right the abysmal home record for Vancouver this year. They've been way better on the road for whatever reason. So a chance to finally kind of make up some ground here with some games at home. So yeah, next one, 7 p.m. puck drop Thursday, January 16th against the LA Kings.
Perfect. Yeah. So I guess that wraps things up for both of us. My name's Ty DeLello and Zach Clarke with Game Over Vancouver. We appreciated having a live chat. It was nice to see. Well, I guess it wasn't nice. It was a lot of negative stuff about the Canucks tonight, and rightfully so. But we appreciate it nonetheless. And yeah, we'll see you all next time for our Game Over Winnipeg and Game Over Vancouver broadcast. So hope to see you again. And yeah, I guess Zach, if you want to take us out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for watching. Always great to interact with our Game Over Vancouver stream. Hopefully a couple Winnipeg viewers as well sneaking in here and there to catch some of the negativity around the Canucks fan base. We've got a great audience here at Game Over Vancouver, so thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Once again, thanks to Ty. It was a great show. Lots of informative content about the better of the two Canadian teams tonight. Thank you all for watching, everybody. Have a great night.